please make room for everybody. This is Experimental Chamber 213 CD. We're about to begin opening a new portal. And just in case you don't understand, I defeated the Demogorgon. Welcome, WonderCon 2022, to Stranger Things, the Dungeons and Dragons of Life. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, a.k.a. Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher at Illinois State University. And today we're going to talk about the wonderful show Stranger Things, the game that inspired it, and then we're going to focus a little bit on choice and chance and how those things intersect with the various types of expertise we have up here. So I'm going to start with my right. To my right, please introduce yourself.
I am Dr. Travis Langley, a distinguished professor of psychology, best known as author of the book Batman in Psychology, A Dark and Stormy Night, the best book on Batman ever written by me. Editor and head nerd of the herd on a dozen other books, the titles of a number of which appear up there. And since the publisher hasn't announced Stranger Things Psychology, Life Upside Down, we may have be wrapping up the work on a book called Stranger Things Psychology, Life Upside Down, coming out next April.
And to my immediate left.
Oh, hi. I'm Justine Mastin. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, a yoga teacher, a podcaster, a writer. I do too many things. But that's not your problem. I have contributed to a bunch of the books here, as well as I am the co-author of a book called Starship Therapies, Using Therapeutic Fan Fiction to Rewrite Your Life, which is available wherever fine and pretty good books are sold. I also have two podcasts, Starship Therapies and Dark Side of the Mat, where I look at the creeps, cults, and crimes, especially in the yoga industry. And I am thrilled to be here as Robin.
Next.
I'm not nearly as funny.
Lies!
Brittani Oliver, C.S. Navarro. I've contributed in Black Panther Psychology, and I've thinking about contributing in this, this thing about Stranger Things. I've also am a marriage and family therapist. I'm interested in grief and loss. I've also worked with TAY, which is transitional age youth, and I'd love to be here. Thank you guys for having us.
Next.
And I'm going to finish out the Travis sandwich. My name is...
Call it the Demogorgon.
Am I the lettuce?
My name is Travis Adams. I'm a Marine and a social worker. I specialize in working with veterans and active duty service members with PTSD. I've contributed to about 6 of those books that Dr. Langley mentioned.
Excellent. So what we've done is we've all picked a particular scene from the series, and we're going to talk about their idea of choices and chance in relation to our particular expertise. However, if we're going to do this right, given it's a Dungeons and Dragons panel, I need 3 volunteers. Can I get 3? Okay.
That was first.
I need one more. All right, I can't throw this stuff. I'll get kicked out. All right. And then one more. So here's what we're going to do. All right, and we're going to trust you guys. Roughly every 10 minutes or so, you 3 give each other a look, and you each roll your die. Yeah, you got to cooperate here, okay? You each roll your die and add the total. Now, if you can't do that, got to let them know. If your total equals 16, 17, or 18, an audience member gets to ask us a question immediately regardless of what we're talking about.
This is terrifying.
Roll more often than once every 10 minutes, or it'll take a while. Hey, if you've built D&D characters, you know how long it takes to get those 16s, 17s, and 18s when you want them.
There you go. So, but the point is, we like to talk, and we're the DMs, but if you get a 16, 17, or 18 collectively, please let us know. Someone holler out the score. We'll stop in the middle of what we're doing. However, if you get a 14 or a 15, holler out the score, and then we get to finish what we're saying and then answer a question immediately. Does that make sense? I know there's rules and stuff, but that's what we're going to do. It's Saturday night, guys. Let's have some fun, huh? All right.
We'll just pause and wait for numbers.
There you go. So my panelists don't know what order I put their slides in, so that's tough for them. And here we go. This is the slide that Brittany sent me.
Oh, my
And-
God.
And then, that's the one you sent me, and then I think, no, that's the one you sent me. That's the
Okay.
one you sent me. Okay, so you describe your
Seems
scene.
like we should roll for initiative.
So the question was really like, how do you think about chance? How do you think about luck or anything else? And when I think about Stranger Things, my focus was the experience of 11 coming into everyone's lives, like into the major group's lives. And the reason why he asked this question was, what is it different between your experience and how you experience pop culture? And in pop culture, it's like, this is so wonderful that 11 came into these boys' lives because they needed that. They needed her. They needed her to be a hero. And the kind of terrible side of it is she wasn't the hero for everyone. You have like Barb's story in which she just dies. She just becomes a missing child. And that's hard because it's like, well, where does luck play in? And Scott so brilliantly and beautifully asked, like, how does this tie to your story? And I've had a history of loss in my own life, and I think about the fact that I was orphaned by 21, and I've lost so many my parents, I've lost 2 siblings, all my grandparents by 25, and just bad luck. And what is it about the human experience that some people get lucky and some people don't? And I think that Stranger Things is a really perfect example of this, that sometimes something happens in your space that you get to prevail. And it's also really interesting because as much as it's lucky that Eleven's in the group's life, they also struggle. They struggle further out. They have more and more endeavors, more and more experiences in which they have to combat this experience. And I think that we can all have this human experience of, is it better to be Barb's family, in which they've lost a child, and that's it, or you keep going, and you keep battling, and you keep finding yourself in precocious experience, which is worse? And that's like that comparative suffering. And so I think when we think about luck and chance and everything else, it's so interesting. I love Stranger Things for that. And yeah, that's
Thank
my
you for
thought.
that, Brittany. Do any of the panelists have a response to Brittany's comment?
You're great.
I don't think of 11 finding the boys as chance. I don't think of that as random. It was like, man, that seems random. It was the whole town. She's psychic. She was drawn to kids who were connected to Will. So I don't see that one as random. Once you got people with psychic stuff, it's like, okay, I don't see
All
that
bets
one as
are
random.
off, man.
Yeah,
No
all
more
bets are
randomness.
off. It's like, Lucas. Okay, Lucas's little sister happened to be the one. Okay, that one. You get but. Well, when it's my turn, I'll say some stuff on what I think about it. But on the 11th thing, it's like, I don't see that one as chance.
Ooh.
What I like about it is by the time you get to season 2 and 3, you're not even you don't even remember their initial encounter. But what I'll talk about is how your experiences of every moment of L season 2 and 3 are completely imbued with that earlier experience, even though you unconsciously aren't thinking about it, right? All these chance things end up being what we end up kind of shaping our choices, and we don't really see that happened. And I think it's important to step back and recognize what things actually led to us making choices.
There was just a roll of the dice, Scott? Okay.
Okay. It was a 13.
Okay.
What were the digits? I got to. 6, 6, and 1. What were the odds that they would roll 2 6s?
1, 6.
Okay.
Marvel World.
All right, now we're going to move on to the KFC scene, and this is Travis.
Already?
Already, brother.
So I got to co-write with Brittany on our chapter for the Stranger Things books, where we're talking about missing persons, and how it impacts us, if they're found, if they're not found, if they're found dead, and what that can do to us. And I really like this scene here when they're at the family dinner. They're leading up to it, and they go there, and the mom's like, I knew it was tonight, and I forgot.
Yeah.
And she just completely just blanked out on what was going on, so they got KFC. And that happens so often with so many people when they're experiencing trauma, is they kind of just lose sense of track of time. They lose where they're going. They lose where they're at. And that means so much to so many people. I work with so many people who struggle with day-to-day things because of that. So knowing how it can impact your lives. And then I also love the fact of the social support. That despite what they know, they still go to the parents and still try to support them, be there for them, empathize with them, right? And that human connection goes so far, and connection matters so much in life. When we're experiencing trauma, how many of us have had something happen to us and they felt like we're alone, right? I know I have, that nobody's ever experienced this before. And then we get to see it on screen, which is why all these cult TV shows exist, and we'll talk about that in our next panel.
Stay tuned.
But being able to have that connection and bring it in and see it on screen allows us to feel connected, which allows us to have growth.
Yeah. And if you think about like any kind of, I'm the resident like grief researcher, any type of grief and loss, like the really, 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 really crucial element of a protective factor or something that's going to help you get through is connection. And so either I understand that you experienced the same thing that I experienced, or you get me. And so having a community, having someone who has your back, regardless if they understand or not, is going to be essential. And so I think that kind of like plays off of what you're saying.
I also like this scene for the intergenerational tension.
Yeah.
That they all just grin and bear it.
Yeah.
And I would personally argue we don't glorify that enough, right? Sometimes you go to the in-laws and you just grin and bear it. And that's not a bad thing, because what you're doing is creating the opportunity in that moment for something better later. And all too often we don't think about how much what we're doing right now shapes what the die are going to look like for us 5 years from now, right? So play the role. That's the thing, you can always just default into the role, right? You just default into the role, be kind, be pleasant, and then that'll shape what can happen a year from then. And I think we don't pay enough attention to the moment and how it impacts everything else. Travis,
So
this is your scene.
So there's, yeah, so,
Okay.
wait, what are the digits?
So I'll tell you what, it's a clean break. It's a clean break, Travis. Someone has to
So the
ask
answer to the question, Travis, is yes. What?
But you have 5 seconds to get to the mic, or 5 seconds to blurt it out, because we can't wait. 1.
Yell.
Question. 2.
Robin.
Dude, let me do this. Go ahead.
So how do we balance the decision between is it chance or is it fate? Are we drawn to things versus it doesn't matter because we got to this point. Like this point is beautiful and there's joy here. So who cares what it was? So how do we balance that? Because I'm interested in this question, but I'm also interested in getting to the end point.
So
Excellent question.
So this is in pop culture and real life?
Yes.
Because in theory, like in my opinion, like pop culture like explains it so much clearly, but real life is muddy. Like something that when I was learning in school, it was like, it's clear as mud. And so it's really hard to say, is this fate, is something to do? Like something I tell my clients is that our brains are as powerful as anything. Like we can convince ourselves that anything is true. We can convince ourselves that picking up the call and texting or calling our ex-boyfriend is the best choice ever when it's not. Or staying with somebody that doesn't make us happy. Like we can convince ourselves that anything is true. And so I think it's hard to answer that question of like, is this fate or not? Because so often we are more powerful than we believe. We are powerful in our choices. We are powerful in our convictions. We are powerful in the decisions that we make every single day. And yet we feel disadvantaged to them. And that's real life. And that's hard. And so that's why I'm asking, is this metaphorical or is this real? Because that's different. Because in any story, it's beautiful and it's inspiring when things happen and they work out. Because in any movie where, like any romantic comedy where the two get together, we never see 10 years later. We never see 2
Right.
days later. Someone who leaves their wedding, like, to escape with somebody else. We never see 5 days later. We get caught up in that one moment, in that one experience, and how beautiful it is, and that's not real, unfortunately.
Now, I'd also add that we live at the edge of our expectations all the time, and we don't know it. So, for example, all of you tell yourselves a story about gravity every time you walk, and you don't know you're telling yourself that story until you trip on the stair.
Yeah.
Right? So my point is, when all of our expectations align and we have this immense satisfaction, it feels like fate. Right?
Yeah.
It really feels like that's
Yeah.
how things were supposed to happen. And we don't recognize that our expectations kind of aligned at that moment. And it just feels glorious because it's so easy.
Way
It just
more-
feels so easy.
Way more succinct.
No. So Travis, Robin, and Steve.
Yes. How many of you have not seen season 3? Why? All right. Well, you either know this or you shouldn't be here. All right. So I don't really know what else to say. It says we got to talk about this scene.
Spoiler is past.
Spoiler alert! They haven't left.
Oh, they're running out now.
All right, late in season 3, while they're still wearing off the effects of a truth serum. There's no such thing as truth serum. It was a truth serum. Steve acknowledges that he is falling for Robin, and so she reveals that she's gay. And there's a moment where he's paused, he's taking it in, and so our attention's on him. We're waiting for his reaction. So it's very easy to miss for a second where there is this look on her face, like, I've just ruined everything, but I had to tell him. It's like, and she's just feeling horrible. Most people miss that. If you watch this again, when we're waiting for his reaction, look at her face before the camera cuts away. And then he starts joking about the girl that she was interested in, and she's laughing with delight. It's more as like, she was certain this was going to go bad. And where chance figures into this, I've got a different interpretation of the word chance, of the use of chance. Here's that she took a chance by telling him this.
Fantastic. Thank you, Travis. And just to add a bit of dramatic oomph, Robin and Brenner are going to do that scene for you
From our own perspectives.
from our own perspective.
Yes. Listen to me, Steve. It shocked me to my core, but I like you. I really like you. But I'm not like your other friends, and I am not like Nancy Wheeler.
Robin, that's exactly why I like you.
Do you remember what I said about Click's class? About me being jealous and, like, obsessed?
Yeah.
It isn't because I had a crush on you. It's because she wouldn't stop staring at you.
Mrs. Click?
Tammy Thompson. I wanted her to look at me, but she couldn't pull her eyes away from you and your stupid hair. And I didn't understand, because you would get bagel crumbs all over the floor, and you asked dumb questions, and you were a douchebag, and you didn't even like her. And I would go home and just scream into my pillow.
But Tammy Thompson's a girl.
Steve,
Yeah? Oh, shit.
yeah, holy shit. Steve, did you just OD over there?
No, I'm just thinking.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, Tammy Thompson, she's cute and all, but I mean, like, she's a total dud.
She is not.
She so is. She wants to be like a singer. She wants to move to Nashville and shit.
She has dreams.
She can't hold a tune. She's practically tone deaf. Have you heard her?
all the time.
Shut
up.
She
She does not sound like that.
She does sound like that. She sounds exactly like
She
that.
does not. You sound like a Muppet.
She sounds exactly like a Muppet giving birth. Hold you now.
We'll be holding on forever.
You gonna roll those die or what?
It was
And-
616.
What are the odds that it would be the Marvel Earth?
Getting close. Then, though, we're going to talk about my scene. This is where Nancy Wheeler has to make the choice. Joyce Bauer has to make the choice. Right, and he's in the chamber. And the reasons that choice and chance matter here is because all the things that have happened in the seasons up to this, what we tend not to understand is when we make choices, all the things that happen when we make those choices become associated with making that choice. That's how your brain works. It connects the effects of your choices even if you didn't plan them. It connects those effects to your choices. And it actually shapes the way you make choices in the future. That matters because these two characters go through so many choices together that lead to unintended consequences. We can see that they somewhat fall in love or have this nurturing relationship. And we as the viewers, when we see this scene, we're not just watching the two of them in a chamber, her making choices about whether or not he might die. What we're seeing is the whole series. Right, we're seeing their entire relationship. Now, we're not consciously seeing it, but all of you cried at this moment, right? And you all cried because you were experiencing their entire relationship. And this goes back to the idea that our expectations come from what's happened to us in our lives, and they're constantly being pushed unconsciously into what we're experiencing now, and we don't even know it. The things that are happening now get foregrounded against our memories. So our actual, what we call phenomenology, our actual experience of the moment is full, imbued with memory. And this scene is just the perfect bringing together of choice and chance in, of course, a very tragic way, but that's why we all cried. So I absolutely loved this scene. You can clap, I saw you back there. I worked.
I have a question. How do we think about how gender plays a role in sacrifice?
Oh, yeah.
Truly.
Me. Oh.
Anybody.
So there is a certain level of stereotypical gender portrayal in this scene. All right. I would say that the writers are trying to do something generationally that's gender-based. I wouldn't say that this is prototypical of all gender-related heroism. I think they were sticking pretty clearly to stereotypes at this point. I would also say, irregardless, these are two adults that have lived a life in a context, and they have suffered and grown together.
Agreed.
And so even if we would call this stereotypic, it's real, it's lived, and beautiful. So I think sometimes when we look at a relationship and we talk about how culture talks about it, we end up denying its authenticity, its robustness. Yeah. My relationship with my wife is my relationship with my wife. Our arguments are our arguments, right? And ain't nobody else's, and they're not invited.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, okay. Did I answer your question?
Yeah,
Mona?
that's fine.
Okay,
That's
then.
perfect.
Right there. Anybody question?
What's an example of real-life sacrifice?
Ooh.
Can I?
Oh, please, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I think of things like giving up dreams
Yeah.
rather than giving up life, someone in a partnership gets a job in a new state and they have to decide who's going to give up their dream, right? Either the person who got the job in the other state or the person who is giving up the life that they know and love. And so that's an example of an everyday sacrifice that we don't use that language to describe. And with that kind of sacrifice comes grief in the same way there is grief when someone dies. And culturally, we do not give that enough weight
Yeah.
and meaning. And that's why I just love Brittani's work so much.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes is, "With every choice comes grief." Every choice, regardless if it's good, bad, neutral, or anything else, there is some part that you're losing out on. And something that you hit on, like something that I think about was like, what is that sacrifice? It's like thinking about COVID. Who stays home?
Yeah.
Who stays home with your kid? Who provides? Who, like, what decisions are made based off of income? Like, all of those things happen to all of us. Regardless if you have children or not, like, there are thoughts about what we're going to do in this new world. And so I think that that's a part of sacrifice.
Well, I think that also, too, you start looking at when you make a decision or you take that chance, you make that choice, you have that what if the next day, the next month, the next year. Like, oh, if I had done this, I could be here. Or if I had done this, this person would be alive. And we start having to remind ourselves that that's a hindsight bias, right? I'm looking at information that I know today to justify my actions a year ago. I have to put myself back in the position a year ago when I made that decision. So I think that's also a huge part of what we're talking about up here.
Especially with your military background.
Exactly. And when you're carrying those what ifs with you because the outcomes were so tragic, I would argue what we don't do is spend enough time letting those people make that grief social. And in other words, in the military, when soldiers come back from a patrol, there should be a counselor right there, right then, regardless of what happened, to make the phenomenon social instead of making it personal. Because particularly when lives are at risk or you're generating violence, these are people that are being paid by the state to do things that could lead to very violent outcomes. That's traumatic for anybody. And we need to fess up to the fact that it's going to be traumatic and put, I don't use the word need often, but I would like us to put things in place that could let people not let this fester and make it social so that we share their suffering with them.
And there are units that are doing that. My last role before I became a social worker, I was a peer support specialist.
Yeah.
So a veteran diagnosed mental illness, living in recovery, in my case PTSD. And I would go speak to units about to deploy and coming back and let them know, like, hey, I'm effed up and I should have asked for help earlier. Unfortunately, there are so many rules and regulations in different branches. Right? If you're in the Army and you're saying, I'm messed up, okay, well, I can make you a driver, I can make you a cook, you can go to the postal office, you can go to an admin office. In the Marine Corps, every Marine is a rifleman first. And if I say I have a mental health disorder, then I get my rifle taken away, and I'm out of the Marine Corps. And that's not worth it.
That's grief.
So I will white knuckle this, because at least I have that camaraderie, I have that cohesion with my people to make it a little bit easier. And it's when I lose that identity, things amplify and I feel so much worse.
And you come home and you really are alone because you're not with people that understand.
Absolutely.
You know, absolutely. Okay, we're going to move on to the next. Oh, wait a minute. Who did I miss?
You skipped me.
Okay.
You did it on purpose.
I know.
I saw you think about it because you were like, she
I wasn't going
saw.
to leave that to chance. I was going to let Robin have the last word.
Yeah. So I'm going to lighten the mood.
It's heavy.
Bring it way up, and I'm going to talk about the healing power of play. Woo! Yes. And this does link in with chance and choice. And these are, I couldn't pick just one. I, as you noticed from my many jobs, I have a problem picking one lane, so I picked 4 lanes. And these are Eleven and Hopper, when they started building their life together, one of the ways that they built rapport with each other was through play. And Hopper talks about this in his goodbye letter when, we didn't know it was a goodbye letter at the time. His heart-to-heart letter, that, he misses doing puzzles and playing games, and, they were playful with food, and there's that scene where, they're dancing around the house, and it's such a great way for intergenerational folks to find commonality, and I invite all of us to never stop playing, because it was the choice that Hopper made to play with his daughter that led to the chance of having another daughter where he could make the choice to use play again. So anything we learn is never wasted, and play, Mr. Rogers said play is the work of children, and I say that play is the meaning-making of adults. Yeah, right? Thank you, but wait, there's more. And then, of course, we have the kids playing D&D, which is full of choice and chance. And the fact that they gave themselves permission to engage in that, they were able to pull on that stuff later when it was time to fight a real-life Demogorgon and make choices with the chances they were given. And then I would say similar to Will and his mom. Mom encouraged Will to draw. You know, she bought him 120 crayons when they didn't have much. She was always asking him about his art, engaging with him about his art. And so when he couldn't give voice to the vines underneath the town, he was able to draw them, and she was able to understand them. And last but not least, my would-be love, Steve, and Dustin were thrust together through the chance meeting at the Wheelers and made the choice to link up and use their unique skill sets together. And then Steve uses his experience as an older, wiser, cooler dude to help usher Dustin into the play that is adolescence and dating. And Dustin gets to keep Steve grounded and feel important and needed. And so every choice we make, there are chances and choices, and they're all mixed up together and they influence each other. But my invitation to you today, and obviously none of you are afraid of play because you are all at WonderCon, but I invite you to carry this out with you into the real world and remember that play is important and vital, and it helps us make meaning of our lives. And it's the most important thing, in my opinion, we can do for ourselves. So go forth and play.
All right. Well, anyone have a quick comment on play? I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here, right? We're jointly sharing our imagination. And what we don't understand is that is real. And all this happening right now is real. And that person sitting next to you might say hi to, that's real, right? So my point of imagination is not the opposite of real, right? And teaching kids to play is actually teaching them to live robustly instead of living within limits, because believe me, the world's going to tell you what your limits are. And you have to teach your kids to courageously play because that's how we find out who we can be. Yeah, what's up?
For those of you who've done therapy or these, therapeutic play, how do you guys recommend play for those to do their healing, to do their meaning with it?
I consider the work that I do adult play therapy, even though I will use the language of other stuff. But really, I'm engaging, and I only work with adults, I am engaging adults in story making. I'm engaging adults in understanding different parts of themselves through, assign that part an avatar. I no longer have an office outside of my home, but in my home office I have a little baby Yoda, also known as Grogu, that I use to represent the inner child, that I will pull out and say, okay, tell it to Grogu's face what you just said about that childlike part of you. And nobody can say that to Grogu's face, because what they said to their inner child was something like, oh, I'm immature and stupid. Like, tell that to Grogu.
And something that I use, because I predominantly work with transitional age youth, so 18 to 25, or I've worked with children in the past, is that play doesn't necessarily always mean fun. I remember that after the election a couple of years ago, I was working with an individual who was from Mexico and said, does this mean I'm going to get deported? And we played Uno. We had a conversation. What does this mean for his family? What does it mean for him? And it can cover heavy topics when nothing else can cover it. And he was 5, a tiny human trying to figure out the world. And sometimes Uno and Jenga and checkers can be grief work. And sometimes chess can be something else. I've sat with clients and said nothing and played chess. And so I think that these games mean a lot more than people think. And so play therapy doesn't necessarily, or art therapy or anything else doesn't necessarily mean that it is spectacular and exciting and like lovely. Sometimes it just means I just need to sit in the room with you and need someone to see me.
In my office, I have a lot of Marvel stuff and DC stuff, and I have a veteran, a Navy veteran who experienced military sexual trauma and found it very difficult to talk about their trauma, and is a huge Captain America fan. So they held on to my Captain America shield while disclosing stuff to help get that power, to help feel empowered and stronger through that.
Fantastic. We are going to turn the floor over to the audience. Are there any questions that you might have? If you don't want to use the mic, then please make sure you speak up loudly for the whole audience can hear you.
Sure. Getting into the whole D&D and things, can you speak to the choice of Dungeons and Dragons for these cases and outlet of play in the 1980s when it was sort of an ostracized activity as opposed to now when it's more accepted as being used therapeutically?
I'm going to speak on that one because I was playing Dungeons and Dragons in '79 on a piece of Formica countertop. We took the markers, we made up a hallway, and we had to position our pieces. Didn't really know how to play, called a friend, helped us out. Oh, totally did it in secret. And loved it. And then there were just different phases of my life where I'd come back as a DM. It was just the creativity. It was just the absolute creativity. And you had to have a decent DM. I'm sorry, but if you've ever played with a rotten DM, it's just not worth a maniacal, I'm going to kill everybody. It's not fun, right? You need real problems to solve together. So, no, you played it in your basement in the 70s, and now everybody's playing it online. It's fantastic.
I think it was also a bonding activity
totally.
for us.
Absolutely.
This thing that, it was going to get ostracized. And the guy, the friend who introduced my group to D&D, his girlfriend's dad was a preacher, and he was just horrified by that. He preached sermons against D&D, so it's like, well, that was a jab at his future son-in-law. But for those of us who were playing, it's like we weren't into, for at least my group, we weren't into sports. There were the things that we weren't into, and it connected us in something creative and imaginative and wild and adventurous, and it was just a wonderful thing.
I just want to add on real quick, the scene that I showed, the death scene, right? What I didn't talk about was the relationships we develop with those characters are called parasocial. In other words, when we experience someone's emotions, the reason we experience someone's emotions is because we use the same part of our brain we use to experience our own emotions, which means looking at someone sad makes you sad. So when you're playing Dungeons & Dragons, data indicate people who have a character that dies go through a grieving process, right? When a character dies, it ends a certain parasocial group, right? Now you have to create a new player, but that group, even though it might be imaginary and parasocial, it's dead, but it gets associated with, maybe not as intensely, of course, but it nonetheless gets associated with emotions. And I think that's also, as Travis said, one of the reasons we enjoy it, because it brings us together in this abstract, very social way.
And then fan fiction enters the scene.
Yeah.
Hi. Right, because we don't like that feeling or we don't agree with it, whether it's something that the DM did or something that a showrunner did. We know in our bodies that it didn't feel right, and so we start rewriting that story, and that's where fan fiction comes from, and that can be in the real world or the fictitious world. And for those of you who came to the rewatch panel, I talked about parasocial relationships, and I call them fandom attachments because they are no less important than any other attachment in our lives. They're different because as much as we love Chewbacca, he can't love us back. But
That's very unfortunate.
but it is very unfortunate. But loving Chewbacca may help us through something. I know, I could have gone with a Stranger Things character, but somehow I always use Chewbacca in that example. I guess I want him to love me back. Chewbacca, call me.
What a Wookiee.
Yeah, I think that D&D also goes with, it's a party, right? And their party wanted to find Will and live together. But before that, they were a community with like-minded things. Now there's a big push towards community of tribes. and understanding that we are multiple tribes and multiple gatherings, and you can like D&D, and you can play sports, and you can be in the military, and you can love Stranger Things or Supernatural and all those other things. You can float between, and again, that builds that connection to make us not feel so alone. Travis has said on previous panels, like when he was growing up and reading comic books and how he couldn't understand why comic books kept disappearing from the rack. Because you weren't the one buying them.
Yeah, who were those kids? I never knew who else, or I assume the kids. I didn't know who else was buying those comics. I knew they were there somewhere in that town, but I sure felt alone with them.
Yeah, and I think that going back to your question of, it's so accessible now, or accepted now, and that's because we can all bond through communities like this, and this is part of all of our tribe, is WonderCon, Comic-Con, cosplaying, Doctor Strange, Chucky and Joker. So we're all there.
I agree. I think that the culture has evolved. Like I think about like my brother looked at me and said, "You're gonna be my little brother. I don't have anybody else." So I was like, "Okay." So I played Halo, and I grew up with Assassin's Creed, and I did the things to make myself like more masculine in some ways, in some whatever comic book like more masculine, but to think about it, it's like, okay, well, it's more accepted now because everyone's giving an opportunity to be seen. And I think that acceptance of I want to be seen, and I also think this plays out in like the Marvel universe, like the idea of like how much money is going into these movies is massive because it's lucrative. And so with that, brings in more opportunities for D&D. It brings in more opportunities for a lot of different avenues to be explored because it's lucrative and it's interesting because people care. And it's not that it just didn't happen before, it's that now it's lucrative, so now people pay more attention.
And we can connect again, right? Internet, TV,
Yeah, exactly.
Twitter. We can have those online relationships to spread our joy, interests, loves.
We have another question.
Sorry, I took over. So, yes, we've all found this connection. We used to feel so alone, and now it's more accepted. But then to bring it back to this, is that by choice or by chance that we have found each other?
Ooh.
So, for me, because our choices are always become associated with the effects of those choices, regardless. So, for example, in the scene that Travis discussed, where Robin comes out, right? There are data to indicate that when members of one group watch a member of their group do something kind to a member of what one might call a not group, or out group. I don't want to use that language, but someone from another group.
We're
if
out.
They see, I didn't, you know what I'm saying?
I'll own it.
My point is that seeing someone that you identify with treat someone that you may not identify with, treat them well, actually ends up having an impact. Now, these are paper pencil tests, and that sort of thing. But the point is, you don't even know that the effects of your choice to watch the show are influencing you, right? And so what you think is a choice now was actually shaped by chance years ago. And so choices really aren't so much different from chance. They're just chance memories, right? That just move through our lives with us, and we just keep surfing with the choices and the chance that I'm going to use the word embodied over the course of our lives. And I think that leaves us a little more open to the fact that, I'll say this and shut up. There's way too much pressure in this culture for people to know who they are and to act as if everything that happens to them is a function of their choices, right? This is a very dangerous way to raise a culture, and I think we're seeing some of the ill effects of raising a culture that way. So I would say that becoming aware that our choices are actually remembered chance is not a bad way to look at things.
And I tend to speak very lengthy, but this will be very short. I think that the answer can be both and. Does not have to exist in either. It can be both and.
Yeah, I mean, we've got there is the birds of a feather thing. And of course, we all met. It's like we through online.
I found you. I manifested
yeah.
that through choice.
Chance.
A guy who, looking for people. A guy who walks up to me at a convention and says, "How can I get involved in these books?"
Yep.
Met you through Billy. Met through Janina.
I came here to hear your panel 6 years ago. And then I met Janina, and then she brought me into the
Yeah, and I met, yeah, so we got to know you through
And I met
her.
you through Billy.
Yeah, through Billy.
Chance.
And but see, I'm saying, yeah, there's like, so there's the birds of a feather thing. There also, there things that are chance. There are patterns in all of them. There are meaningful things. You cross paths with somebody, you're going to have something in common with them. I'm looking at the digits. I didn't even say it the last few times. Every time they rolled these things, I would look for a pattern in the numbers. Twice we got 365.
616.
Yeah, we got 616 twice. It's like, what are the odds that twice we get the number of days in a year? Not counting every fourth year. And then one about 535. What are the odds that it would have been all odd numbers?
Stranger Things.
It's, the odds are actually only 1 in 4 on that specific roll. So in the course of the evening, of course, there'd be one. It's people underestimate how much random seeming stuff isn't. But we see patterns all the time. It's useful. It's valuable. Sometimes they're real. Sometimes, so what if it's not a real pattern? We make them real because it's meaningful to us. Carl Jung called that synchronicity, finding meaning in patterns. And I'm not a Jungian, but I do know a couple people here who really love Carl Jung. And I had one more thought, but I've already lost it. Scott, it's your show.
No, fantastic. So look, we have to close this portal fairly soon. So before we do, I want everyone to give a round of applause to the staff at this place. Amazing. And then I want to start down here with Travis and tell everyone where they can find you if they want to.
I have a very low internet profile, so I'm not even going to pass that one right now because I'm thinking about changing it. But you'll see me at different panels like this in the Dr. Langley's various books. And on Dark Loops, I've been on a couple of your podcasts.
Yeah, various books. And on Instagram at Be Therapeutic Like Bumble.
You still have one chance to see me here at the con. Tomorrow, as part of the Comics Arts Conference, I am giving a presentation called Queer Woman's Search for Meaning. Yeah. Robin, queer icon like me. You can find me on social media at Mind Body Fandom because I take a holistic approach to healing, mind, body, and fandom. You can find my podcasts, Starship Therapies and Dark Side of the Mat, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can pick up Starship Therapies using therapeutic fan fiction to rewrite your life wherever you get books. And then go online and tell me how you liked it. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. You can find me on Dark Loops Productions. Just type that into the Google machine and it'll take you to where you need to go. You can also find me on the Department of Psychology webpage at Illinois State University. And Travis.
Look for Travis Langley online. I'm easy to find. I am. Although the best place to look for me is Amazon. Or a few minutes from now, a couple of Travises and a different mix of other fine folks, at least a couple of whom I see, will be talking about, what is the title? Psychology of Cult TV Shows, How to Cope with Loneliness Through Pop Culture, which we hit on some here. And you remember when Brittany said she wasn't funny? All right, thank
Travis
you.
is the
Scott?
king.
Scott?
Yeah, so first of all, can we thank the die rollers, please? Those, and you're all more than welcome to keep those as souvenirs if you'd like. Oh, well, okay, don't then.
100%.
If you want. Thanks to all of you for coming. We had an absolute blast. Have a good con. Thank you.
Thank you.